Okay, welcome everyone to today's OpenFin webinar. I am Mitra Raknabadi. Sorry, I am going to mute everyone here. I am Mitra Raknabadi, VP of Community, joined by our Chief Product Officer, Nick Kolba. On today's webinar, we welcome one of our highly innovative partners who are the data privacy layer within OpenFin, eXate. The goal of eXate is to take away the friction around data privacy and to make implementation as easy as possible, which will be demonstrated in just a few minutes. Before I hand it over to the founders, Sonal and Peter, I want to share a few notes for our audience. Live chat is on, so if you have any questions during the webinar, please post them in the chat. We'll be answering them there. To get in touch with eXate, we'll be sharing their email address in the chat as well. And the webinar is being recorded, and we will be sharing it within a week for everyone, so no need to be taking notes. With that, I will hand it over to Peter.
Hi, everybody. This is Peter, and I'm here with Sonal.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you for joining us today, and thanks to everyone who's going to be listening on the recording. And also thanks to OpenFin for allowing us to have this webinar. We are eXate, and we are the ink bomb for data. Before we go in to show you exactly what we built, I'd like to start with a little bit of a synopsis as to what we're hearing in the market. The motivations that financial institutions have to become digital are something we hear a lot of places talk about now. Now, everyone says that the technology threat is that fintechs they're going to come and they're going to take all this money away from the banks. But in reality, 0.00006% of fintechs become unicorns or billion-dollar companies. So it's not really the fintechs that the banks have to worry about. It's TechFin. It's Apple. It's Google. It's Facebook. That is who has the real threat, because most financial institutions have legacy systems, whereas your tech fins are highly API-driven, very, very modern technology, and that's what's tough to compete with. However, fintechs such as eXate and OpenFin have the ability to help banks to adapt, to take some of the legacy weaknesses that you'll see in a financial services institution and to fix them. So that is what we're going to show you today as we walk through the presentation. One thing we find really interesting, and we spent time in the Accenture program, and we got access to a lot of interesting research. Now, the word that you're hearing in the financial services industry, it's not digital, because when you speak to a lot of organizations and you go ask for funding, you say, I need all this funding because I'm going to do digital. And what you'll find is management's going to be like, digital? We did that 3 years ago. Why are we still doing that? So the new buzzword and the things you're hearing from the consultancies is not digital, but data-driven organizations. It's a much fancier new word that allows people to get budget. So data-driven organizations, really interesting. You see from the statistics, 23 times more likely for new customers, 6 times likely to retain them, and 19 times more profitable. That is, you hear everyone talking about, you need to monetize your data. This is what happens when you have the ability to monetize your data. Given the fact that there's a lot of consultancies pitching this, 92% of banks are increasing their investment in data-driven organizations, and 62% are already seeing measurable results. Now, companies who invest, interestingly enough, 38% revenue increase over 3 years. So the statistics, now you think if you're sitting in senior management and you have the consultancies coming in and tell you this, you're going to eat this up with 2 spoons. Like, I need some of that 38% increase in revenue. That's fantastic, and you can see why banks want to do this, but the real problem is what's stopping you. First of all, in order to monetize your data, you have to access it, which is typically challenging to say the least. Secondly, you have to share it. And we say sharing, we mean sharing internally, and also potentially sharing with third parties such as fintechs, so that they can do the latest AI technology for you, which is more than likely to be cloud-based. A lot of people struggle with that. And the third thing that we're hearing, this is new, we only started hearing this about 6 to 8 weeks ago, is the concept of fast data. So when you say fast data, what that means is, think to AI, as we were just saying. If you have a very long approval process to get that data approved, if you have to go queue up with compliance and it's going to take you a week to determine who's allowed to see the data, do I have to share it to someone on the cloud? That data now has a very short half-life, and it's useless because there's another bank out there that has a faster process for accessing data that's already shared the insight with the client, did the trade, and it's settled. So the concept of fast data means that you have the ability to access your data fast and determine who can see it. The solution that we've come up with that we're going to walk you through today is comprised of 3 different components, or 3 different engines. These engines are made available to institutions, and the developers get these engines either in the form of an API toolbox or through OpenFin, and they have the ability to implement this quickly and easily for data privacy. The first engine that we have is the sharding engine. The sharding engine, this is the most important. We're going to come back to shards a lot when we talk into this. And what the shards do is we will take a sensitive attribute. We'll say Sonal is a sensitive attribute you want to protect. The first thing we do is we start with encryption, so 256 encryption. Then that resulting ciphertext is put into the ciphertext scrambler, where we inject characters, we take out characters, and we spin them all around. So you have a new ciphertext that does not look like the original one. Then we take out our industrial grade data scissors and we chop the actual strand of data into 3 pieces. That's the sharding engine. So keep that in mind. And what we'll show you is we're going to talk about how you can use those shards to protect data. The second thing we have is a rules engine. The rules engine, the best way to think of this is you're digitizing your data policy. It's such that the subject matter experts with respect to who's allowed to see data will maintain this. As a developer, you can make an API call to this and it will tell you who's allowed to see the data or not. So what it does is it stops developers from having to become experts in regulatory compliance and cross-border data transfers and who's allowed to see the data. Instead, they become a customer of the central utility that manages that. Lastly, if you have the ability and you pass the rule checks in the rules engine, we have a reconstruction engine, which puts back the shards of data such that they're able to be seen by the right person in the right place at the right time. So what we're doing, in a nutshell, is we are pseudonymizing the encryption string with the ability to completely anonymize it if you have to. By doing this, you liberate your data. Data is quite constrained now, but if you liberate it, you have the ability to ensure that it is secure, yet mobile, because data needs to flow through your organization. It's the lifeblood of every company nowadays. Secondly, we ensure the data is protected, yet accessible, because people need the data to do their jobs. Thirdly, we make sure the data is available to all, because everyone needs to use data, but visible to a few, because a lot of the times, if you're processing data, you don't need to look at it. So we give you the ability to process it without every person having to see it. The use cases that we are seeing, I'll be honest with you, when we built this as a GDPR solution initially, which by the way has all of your GDPR components still built into it, what we found is the use case that we kept seeing over and over is testing with production data in non-production environments. I'm not sure of the banks of the people on the call, but many of the banks we speak to have this problem, both from an audit perspective as well as from compliance, just won't give developers access to test the data properly. And we're going to show you how we can address that. The second thing, coming back to your challenge, is sharing the data. Our second most important use case is sharing the data with third parties, be they a SaaS provider. So we're going to show you today how we can share it safely on the cloud, or any other fintech that you might want to do data sharing with. And lastly, then the last thing we've seen over the past 2 to 4 weeks, the amount of people asking us how can they use our tools to protect data in sandboxes has gone skyrocketing. It seems a lot of the banks now are recognizing the need to partner with fintechs, but they're struggling to do it. So they're looking to set up sandboxes, and you hear a lot of the banks saying that they've made the onboarding of fintechs really short, but the minute they're onboarded, they still can't share data with them. So we're seeing a lot of use cases with respect to sandboxes for banks. And lastly, before we go into showing you, why are we the ink bomb for data? Well, in banking, analog world, back in the old days, the way that the bank got the cash from the vault to the ATM machine was that person right there with the really sharp helmet and a box. If somebody tried to interfere with that cash from going from the vault to the cash machine, then there's an ink bomb inside that renders that cash useless. In the same way, in the digital world, data is a new currency. If somebody tries to interfere with your data, we have the ability to ink bomb it, meaning that, remember those shards I talked about? Well, 2/3 of those shards always stay inside your firewall, and 1/3 can be shared with the third party. If we delete those 2/3 of the shards that you hold, you've now rendered your data anonymous, and it's ink bombed. That's it. Enough of the talking. Now we're going to run you through some examples of what we're doing looks like and how you can use it. The first thing that we're going to start with is the rules engine. The rules engine is the brains of the operation, if you will. It's the funnel of our solution. So what this does is the rules engine determines who can look at data, and it sets the rules for the access to the data. So now, if you look at this, there's different types of, we have fund packs. This means you can have different micro policies, and each one is maintained by the subject matter expert. So this is for if you have a funds business. Let's look at client data policy. So we'll just focus on highly restricted data. And as you look at this highly restricted data, we have last name, first name, and email are highly restricted. This could be set by your chief data officer, whomever. We have on the left, you will see corporate data, employee, financial, and personal. We're going to add a new attribute to make highly sensitive. We'll pick personal data, and we'll say that gender is now going to be highly restricted asset. Now we're going to say which countries, where your clients are, where does it apply? This applies to your clients in the UK and Germany. And if you click Germany, it's going to tell you, yeah, no, it's Germany. You can't share it with anybody. But if we go in, let's add a new country. This will apply to our clients that are based in Belgium. And if you click on Belgium, it will show you where Belgium can share data. It defaults to anywhere in the EU. But we'll make it more prescriptive, and we're going to say that Belgium can only share data with the UK. Now for departments, we say management, you're allowed to have access to sensitive data, highly restricted data. But we're going to specifically blacklist IT. Say, IT, you are not allowed to see production data. And our use case on the bottom, you'll see legitimate use, and you'll also see consent in there for GDPR. But we're going to add a new use case, and we're going to call that testing. So now, in summary, what this tells you is for those 4 highly restricted assets, applying to clients in those 3 countries, management can see the data, but IT cannot for testing purposes. So what that means is when you're doing your UAT testing, the development team will see the shard of data. They won't be able to access it, but that shard will be consistent. So if Coca-Cola is the client that is being protected, Coca-Cola will be XYZ123 in every one of your downstream systems. But when the users on the business side go to sign off on the testing, they will actually see Coca-Cola, because we apply the rules to the data attributes, not to the applications. So different people can see different data attributes.
We all know working with synthetic data is really difficult. So this is kind of addressing some of those main key points where it's so hard to work with data that's not real.
Okay. So now we're going to talk about our API services that we offer. So Sonal, do you want to talk a bit about your background of managing a large team of developers?
Yeah, so one of the key things that we've looked at doing is reducing the amount of pain there is in understanding different types of encryption, how you're going to manage the keys, all of those weird and wonderful things. But I had quite a large team of developers. I was a software engineer myself. And the last thing people wanted to do was the boring stuff, which is looking at masking data or protecting data. It was just such a massive pain spot. It's easier for me to get my children to eat their vegetables. But what we've done is we've kind of looked at it in almost like an Apple-esque model where you've got 3 ways to be able to protect data and 5 ways to be able to reconstruct it. We've given you 5 ways because if you're rejected for processing data, 2 of them will give you the reason why. It should be just as simple as that. We don't want to complicate it. We just want to make sure it's easy to be done. It's not going to be time consuming, and it doesn't require too much thinking.
Right. So as we said, we shard to anonymize or synonymize data. We can handle JSON or XML payloads. We have the rules-based reconstruction, which we talked about. We have gating, which allows you to protect data flowing through APIs without doing the sharding, but we use the rules engine to protect the data. We have full audit of who looked at data, who attempted to look at data but was blocked, and if they were blocked, why were they blocked, And we also have a full audit of all the rules that were in place at any given point in time in the past. Our documentation is available via Swagger, and we're deployed via Docker and Kubernetes, so we can scale as much as you want to scale. Now we're going to show you the API and manifest builder. So this is your blueprint for protecting data. So we're going to show you, again, how easy it is for you to protect a data set. So here, we're going to start with your payload that we will drop into a manifest builder. And manifest, like I said, is the blueprint. So we're going to drop in a payload of employee data. So you have very famous employees, and you need to protect their data. It will scan through your payload and say, I found 4 attributes in your payload. You click on the attributes that you want to protect. You harmonize them on the bottom, say they are first name and last name. And that's all you need to do to protect your data.
Yeah, so we have the ability to be able to link it to an individual, which is what this subject entity, but it is non-mandatory. This is a snippet of code that allows you to protect data. So we take that manifest, and off the back of that, you're immediately able to test, and that data will be ready to be protected.
So now to show you exactly how we would use this manifest we just created, we're going to show you the API call. So now here is your same data set. You still have famous employees. They have not left. And we have the manifest name. This is what we just created, where we ticked the boxes and said what attributes. We told it when you find first name and last name in your payload to protect it and shard it. Now, if we execute this, what you will see is that data has been replaced by a shard. And that shard will be unique. First name for Tom will be the same Tom always. And we also have the concept of rotation in there, which allows you, Tom, maybe XYZ123 today, but next week or next month, he might be ABC456. So you can rotate your sharding capacity as well. Now we're going to talk about controlling access to data on the desktop. And this is where the OpenFin and eXate partnership comes into play. But before we do that, I think it's just worth noting the potential hazards of protecting data on the desktop.
So one of the main things that we spend a lot of time speaking to the Information Commissioner's Office and a lot of legal people around what constitutes protection of data and what means data is still data. Encryption is still deemed to be personal data. So as Peter said, we'll keep going back to the sharding. The way our technology works is to reduce the risk of still having encryption as one of your key security measures. For privacy, we're looking at doing it from a sharding perspective that allows us to completely destroy ciphertext if we need to. And with all the technology that's within JavaScript, we know that it is, we've got algorithms that allow you to encrypt data, but one of the things that we do recognize about that is any code that you're going to send to the client is visible to the client. So on the desktop, it's a common known thing. For doing encryption in JavaScript is a bit of a no-no because it's visible on the client. And the other big part of it is man-in-the-middle attack. So if you think about what happened with British Airways, the very, very interesting hack that happened recently, you can see that they were hit by a man-in-the-middle attack. Before their data was taken, it was intercepted and it was sent to another server. So where you're looking at cross-object browsers, cross cores, it's one of those things that we try to reduce. We try to reduce the risk around it, but the consequences were.
Well, if those who saw the news, obviously we all talk about GDPR. It has been sort of forgotten because everyone's been ignoring it. But the Information Commissioner's Office came out with the first fine on GDPR. So 183 million pounds was the size of the fine because they weren't protecting their data properly. And that is a lot of frequent flyer miles. So this is, again, the potential concerns, but luckily there's a solution for this. The solution is the OpenFin and eXate partnership.
Yeah, so what we're looking at is by leveraging off the interop bus that's on the desktop, we're able to move away some of the security concerns around using JavaScript to be able to do the encryption, decryption, and protection of data. By passing the data through the OpenFin interop bus, we're able to provide a service that sits on the desktop that does all of that work for you, as we showed in a very, very simple manner, and returns back the results, and you carry on in your journey. And that is one of the key things that we want to highlight, is that we've got a service that sits on the machine, and that really is the true power of interoperability on the desktop.
So the code snippet that's required with the APIs that we showed you before with the manifest builder and etc. Now Sonal's going to tell you exactly how you run those same APIs through OpenFin.
Yeah, so we've got the standard way to be able to call, send a message on the interrupt bus. We call our console app to say what the UUID is. We've got what topic to subscribe to and send it to. So we're sending it to the data protection layer, topic within there, and we pass in our payload. So if you look at what the payload looks like, it's exactly the same. We've got the same thing. We pass in the manifest name, and you pass in the JSON that you want to protect. That's it. That's all the code that's required for you to be able to protect data without having to deal with all of the additional complexity or having to do it on the client side yourself.
Like as we said, Mitra said at the start, this is how you can make it frictionless and easy to protect data. So now we're going to show you the OpenFin trade blotter. And we're going to show you exactly how it would work using both not using the eXate technology and using OpenFin combined with eXate. So the first thing we're going to show you is the OpenFin trade blotter, which has sensitive information contained within it, but you're not using eXate. Now you'll see all you can see is the shards of data. That's all you can see in the trade blotter. But if we look at it using eXate enabled from the OpenFin Launchpad, we slowed this down by 1.5 seconds so you can actually see it happening because it's pretty fast. There you go. And now you see it reconstructing. That's the reconstruction engine, but some people are not allowed to see it. Oh, we're a little bit of a lag there. And now you will see it's reconstructed, but certain people are blocked. And this is using the rules engine to determine who can see what. So it comes back to what we said before. The rules engine determines who can see the data, which allows you to reconstruct it. So now you can see by integrating the OpenFin blotter with the eXate solution, and Sonal said you're using just a few snippets of code, you can now protect the data very quickly.
So from us doing this integration with the trade blotter, which some of you may have already seen historically, it was less than an hour's work between the two teams that is one based in New York and my guy in Australia. So with time lag, it took less than an hour. So just goes to show how easy and quickly we can get this up and running.
The next thing we're going to show you is we talked on our use cases about how to use the cloud. So we typically show using the eXate and OpenFin combined solution how you can protect data with a third-party SaaS application. We chose one called HubSpot, which is a CRM system. So it could be any CRM system you want. We chose one that was on the cloud, and you'll see some of the individuals are in the protected state. That's because when the data went to the cloud, we sent one shard of data. Now, if HubSpot is breached, or if the service that is hosting HubSpot is breached, there is not enough, remember we chopped it up with our scissors, there's not enough data to reconstruct it. So now you only have a fragment. You're using the functionality, but as I told you, it's the same, because if the individual is XYZ123, the applications don't care if it's Peter or XYZ123, as long as it's consistent, and we provide that consistency. Now we're going to show you exactly the same page using the combined OpenFin and eXate solution. So now we're going to launch the same SaaS-based solution in OpenFin. And you will now see the information is in clear text. And if we click on it, you will see it will all reconstruct. What it's doing is it's taking the one shard off of the cloud. It is finding the other shards that are inside your firewall. It is reconstructing them. It is then undoing the scrambling of the ciphertext, and then it's decrypting it. And for good measure, we do exactly the same sharding with respect to the keys. So now you can see that the information is available when it's running in OpenFin.
Key thing to note there is that HubSpot did no integration work.
They didn't even know we exist. It sits on top of it. It's an overlay. Now to show you the rules engine, again, working with an OpenFin, we're going to change personas. We were in as an RM based out of China. So, we talk about GDPR, so we figure we mix it up a little bit. There's something called China's cybersecurity law, which says you cannot see the personal details of a mainland China resident outside of mainland China. So when we go in as a Chinese RM, we're going to switch in exactly the same company to a US-based relationship manager. And now what we're going to do is try to view the data, and it's going to go through the rules engine, and it comes back with restricted. And now if you click on that, what it tells you is that you're not in the right country to view the data. So this is what Sonal was saying, that when you do your audit calls, it will actually tell you the reason why the key access was not granted. The last thing we're going to show you is how you protect data upon capture. Back to HubSpot now. Nick, who did a bit of the introduction there, is going to be the star of the show. And we are running an OpenFin, and we're going to add is a new note in our CRM system.
Yep, so what we have here is the ability to add a new note to the system. What we do is we have a little icon that sits there. You click the lock, the padlock, and click the setting menu. That then allows you to determine what that attribute is. So we harmonize it and say what type of information it is, and that's it. As an administrator, anytime anybody now uses HubSpot, that's all you need to do. We create an app manifest that sits with it, and you're ready to go.
Now, when you go back and you look through HubSpot running through Chrome, so you're not in OpenFin anymore, you will see immediately thereafter, there's just the shard of data. So we input the data, and we knew that was a sensitive field. It sharded the data, put that one shard of data up on the cloud, and now your data is protected upon input. So you just define that field once as being protected, and going forward, it will always protect data that the user will type into that field. To conclude, there's a few points that we want to end upon to leave you with some thoughts on. It really starts around the importance of data. Again, data is such a valuable asset right now, but you have to look at it, how is that data being used? And I think Sonal's going to share a story about some conversations she's had with some developers at a bank she was speaking to.
Yeah, so one of the common things that we're seeing now with all the data privacy regulations that are in play, GDPR, where you've gone through some audit around your application and they said, okay, you're not allowed to put any more customer information in your system. So going forward, you're going to get the business come up to you and request to have additional data and to get more value out of your system to be able to create some additional reports or whatever they need to do. Right now, what the person I was speaking to, he said, I have to always tell them no. I can't take that data because I'm no longer going to be compliant with our customer identifier policy that we've set on that application, and we're not able to extend the scope of my project anymore. That project then immediately went into BAU state, and he lost that project. So we're just almost looking at it in terms of like everyone wants to be this data-driven organization. It's a better way to be able to provide value to your business by enabling them to be able to put the additional data in there, give them the additional insights that they have, by embracing data, by a way that we are looking to protect it. And like I said, we'll add more value to your business line.
So when you look at it from a business perspective, right, business is looking to IT to constantly deliver value. And by delivering more value to the business line, and to Sonal's point, by addressing the request to put more client data into an application, you're therefore adding more value to the business line, which leads to greater P&L, which leads to basically everybody being happy and stability.
And gaining some of that 38% revenue increase is probably where they're trying to look at it from.
Exactly, because that's what they've been sold by the consultancies, and now we have to figure a way to achieve that. And last but not least, we talked about data-driven transformation. Obviously, it's very important for people to always be in the hottest part of a business. And given the amount of funding we showed you, 92% of banks are investing in this, we really see that and are hearing from people that being part of data-driven transformation are the hot new jobs.
That and cyber.
Yeah, and again, a lot of that comes down to protecting of the data. So by embracing data and by using simple ways to protect data, then the goal here is that it maintains revenue streams, it allows you to add value to your business, and it allows you to be part of the hottest new area of business in the market right now. With that, We're happy to take questions. And again, thank you everybody for dialing in. It is summertime, I do know, and it's a hot and lovely day here in London. But we're happy to take questions, and anything that we can answer, please do ask.
Hi, Peter. It's Mitra. So we have a question from one of our attendees. And the question is, while you mentioned the snippet of code in Trade Blotter took just about an hour, what is the duration of time to set up eXate from project kickoff to production use? Fastest, average, and longest customer project turnups.
Okay, yeah, that's absolutely fine. So it depends if you want to use the cloud-based version of it, which most companies do not, or you want to deploy the keeping the shards inside your firewall. And what we've done is we've tried to automate our deployment cycle. We've managed to reduce it down to a couple of days because we are container-based. So this is, again, a big thing that all the banks are adopting now. So we're on Docker and Kubernetes. So it's a case of re-imaging the Docker containers and setting up the environments in accordance to your policy. So from our side, to get actually set up is very, very light.
And with respect to now with the partnership with OpenFin, it makes it even easier to get the setup working.
Mark, I hope that answered your question. Next question is, why OpenFin?
Why OpenFin? Okay, so there's a few different things. So I think the key thing for us was, how do we reduce the risk of using JavaScript and doing the encryption, decryption on the client side without actually going through JavaScript? And that was one of the key things that when we were reviewing how we wanted to do this, we could create our own container. But one thing is, with OpenFin, they've already done a lot of the work to re-sandbox Electron. There is a lot of power in that interop bus that they have on that desktop to have. So right now within trading applications, we're using it for context passing, between the different windows and many other cool things. But from a data protection perspective, we're looking to offer you two big things here. One is being able to protect the data itself within that environment, so within the message bus between the windows, because in regulations such as GDPR, you will have a thing called purpose of use. So what is the reason you're using that data? If one of your applications is marketing and your other application is legitimate business use or something to do with risk, you're able to, between the applications, differentiate whether or not you are allowed to see that data. So it would be application specific. By having the ability to go through this interop bus and recognizing what types of applications we're using, we're able to give you bespoke results back without having to tie in your identity access management to every single system and writing that code over and over again for different apps. And as we see, we're going to a widget-based sort of model where lots of companies are now looking at creating the individual widgets instead of large applications. This makes infinite sense to be able to have that taken care of securely, but away from the applications, to reduce that the man-in-the-middle attack type things.
Thank you, Sonal. And for someone who's new to OpenFin and eXate, they don't completely understand the use case properly. For beginners, how can they play around with eXate and OpenFin together?
Yeah, so what we've got our email address there. Just reach out to us and we'll get you set up. So we need to just set you up on our cloud instance, which already talks to the OpenFin runtime via their cloud service, the OS launcher. Through there, we'll give you the ability to either inject the JavaScript in yourself. So we're planning to open source that and give that to the community to be able to, without any code change, be able to go through any web page and see if there's any sort of ciphertext that needs to be reconstructed, and be able to better this for the entire community. So that's something that we're looking to do. So we can give you the snippets of code to start with, and it's literally just getting access to the console app that we've got with that's provided to Nick.
Thank you. I've also reshared the email address for eXate. It's info@exatetechnology.com. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to them directly. For any questions regarding OpenFin, you can reach out to info@openfin.co or directly to Nick, which is nick@openfin.co, and I'll put those in the chat as well. We don't have any more questions lined up, but if anyone is still on the call and would like to ask any questions, we will give it just about a minute before we wrap up this call.
And we would highly encourage people to start playing around with it. I think once you really start playing around with it, you will see exactly how easy it is to use. So please do reach out to either ourselves at info@eXate Technology or to Nick or anyone else on the OpenFin team, and you can play with the combination of both OpenFin and eXate.
Thank you, Peter. And just a few last words from us. Again, this webinar has been recorded. We will share it with everyone within a week. It will be posted as a blog and shared to our distribution list. Thank you to eXate, Sonal, and Peter for joining us today. Thank you for everyone who attended the webinar, and we look forward to the next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.